Gentlemen, welcome to the September 24th meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Task Force. My name is Al LeGros, and I'd like to briefly go around and have everybody introduce themselves before we get started, starting with our erudite town planner.
Yeah, I'm Matt James, the new town planner. Slowly getting less new as time goes on.
Matt Gilly.
George Prince.
Dave Brown.
Kevin Johnson.
Bob Eaton.
Phil Taylor.
Peter Leavenworth.
Brian Hurst.
Brian Hurst, Marion, and our
It was 28.
And Amy Heibel.
Amy, you're back in battery there. That's good. Good to hear. Okay, thank you.
That's just part one I didn't do.
All right, just a couple of things by way of announcements. I did put together an article for the October anchor. It's going to cover the topics that we are going to discuss tonight: marine economy, marine resources, and housing. In November, what we're focusing on is going to be the future land use plan. And we just had a brief discussion about that. Next meeting, October 8th, Mark Ironman is going to prepare some comments and a revised section on future land use plan. And it's going to give us an opportunity to kind of dig into where we are relative to that. And then at the end of October, hopefully we'll be able to come to some sort of consensus on whether we feel comfortable with that part of the plan.
So Al, can I?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we going to give Mark any guidelines about what we'd like to see in the future land use plan, or is he going to write it and then present it to us?
I think what I would say to that is if you do have any comments or inputs, please send them to Mark. We had a discussion that we just came from, and a number of issues and questions were raised. So even though we're not going to necessarily talk about it tonight, if people have comments, feelings about future land use, I would say send them to Mark and let him.
Amy, my vision is that that's what we'll try and do on the 8th.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, but if you
Through the different things and say what's good, what's not so good, what do we need to change?
Okay. Good. Okay. I thought maybe some work was being done prior that then would be presented to us. As long as it's an open process.
yeah.
Yeah. As long as it's transparent and
Yep.
open.
Okay, but again, if anybody has any thoughts prior to the 8th, they certainly can communicate those. But, yeah, the 8th is going to be an opportunity for everybody to kind of think about, chew on some of the complications and issues regarding future land use, and then hopefully we can come to enough of a consensus that we can close at the end of October, and then when November comes, at the end of November, we have sort of an agreement. We feel comfortable with where the plan is and what we have to do. All right. We talked about the anchor articles. Approval of the minutes for August 27th. Those were disseminated earlier. Does anybody have any comment or question about those minutes? Any corrections? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? We have a motion?
Second.
Second? All right, all in favor? All right, thank you very much. Okay, tonight, we're going to focus on three areas: marine economy, marine resources, and housing. I'd like to start and open the discussion up about marine economy, and ask if there are any questions, comments, or issues that people would like to raise relative to this in the comprehensive plan. Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at the two graphs on the front. And I
Okay,
guess,
do you have pages, or?
I'm sorry, page 42?
Yeah,
And I guess my question, and probably Matt and George can answer this. We're showing the lobster landings, and is that an accurate number? Because I know that the census and so forth doesn't necessarily show an accurate number as far as dollars.
So there was an incline in 20 and 2021. In the COVID era, the price was sky high, so the effort was very high as well.
But is is that a good number to be?
I don't have the actual
I know.
town landings, you do?
No.
But
I was
the
just-
state landings, this goes along with what the state landings
I think
show.
it seems like it's pretty close.
I think it was fairly accurate up and down the coast.
I have it, I just don't have it with me. I can look and email the group or whatnot, but I know we were the third biggest port in the state.
I just wanted
So
to
that
be sure
puts
that
us-
it
yeah.
accurately showed, the actual dollars.
And I think I have 22's numbers too, and that's not on here, so if we wanted to add another year.
yeah, that would be
We can do
great,
that.
That
and,
would be good.
you can give that to
Yeah.
Matthew, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't think 23's are out yet.
Probably not available yet.
It usually takes them, it's
A
usually the
little
following
over,
year.
a little over a year, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my impression, I've kind of dug around on this a little bit. My impression was that maybe, 21 was a super year.
It was.
And the subsequent year may have dropped off a little bit, but it was made up by an increase in the price of the
Correct.
product.
Correct.
And so in terms of, commercial fishing and stuff, it kind of balanced each other out. That's kind of what
Price was up,
yeah.
so effort was up, so landings were also up, and of course, the high price
I
with
guess the
effort.
thing I'm getting to is, I would like to be sure that we're showing the correct amount of dollars that's coming into the community because of this. And many times, it's not as high as it should be because of just the way the information is collected.
I have that number off the top of my head, that was 38
Yeah.
million.
And I know Monique would probably have that, too.
Okay, so if you could help us out by,
Yeah, I can email it to Matt.
Super.
I can include everyone in the.
yeah,
group,
that's
too.
great. That would be great. Okay,
My other bind.
any other comments or questions about the marine economy section of the report? Yes, sir.
The only thing I could think of adding is maybe we talked about it when the select board adopted that right to fish policy. And there's nothing in here about the fund we talked about when you guys adopted the policy. Maybe include something in the comp plan about some sort of waterfront resiliency fund or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah,
Um,
we haven't acted on it yet, but yeah, it could be mentioned that we're looking
Yeah.
into it,
Okay.
into a fund for,
And also, we adopted it already, so this is.
Right, that was the other thing.
Relevant, so
Well,
should
we adopted a
get that.
policy, and I like that
Yeah.
this says ordinance. I
Yeah.
would like to see it become an ordinance still, but.
Okay. Who's going to, can somebody provide some language for that?
What do you mean? What kind of language?
Okay, so you say you want to include that. How about giving us a
oh,
sweet, concise
Well, Kevin-
input on
I
that?
think Kevin had it.
how would, to include a possible fund. It was for disaster,
Okay.
Call it waterfront resiliency.
waterfront, yeah. That's a
It
big
sounds
word.
good when you use
Yeah.
that.
That's what I keep telling all these guys doing grants, I said, use the word resiliency.
I remember you saying that, that's
Yeah.
why I added it.
And by the way, 6 of them got them here in town, so.
Okay.
And guess-
It works then,
and guess-
see?
And guess what word they used?
Yeah,
Gotta-
Resilience.
Gotta have
Yep,
the buzzwords.
in every friggin' sentence.
Okay, just looking at the goals overview, protect and embrace ability to commercially harvest finfish, lobster, shellfish, and so on, that's pretty self-explanatory. Preserve and expand intertidal deep water access, which I know has been a bone of contention because we are apparently losing access, and I think that's important to include here. Mitigate the impacts of climate change, that's pretty self-explanatory. work with neighboring communities and regional partners. Also pretty self-explanatory. I would just,
Excuse me.
yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I'm back on goal 2.
Okay,
Strategy 2.1.4,
okay.
review shoreline zoning and land use ordinances to protect existing access from incompatible development. I wonder if we should specify what that is. I don't really know what that means exactly.
Might mean residential and commercial fishing too. I don't know, Mark, do you have any thoughts about that? No?
No, I just am not, it's not clear.
So it's not clear?
What incompatible development is. And then, strategy 2.2.3, I don't know what that means. Maintain, expand harbor master and shellfish warden capacity to manage and address needs in the near shore environment. What does that mean?
That would be, I believe, clam diggers, the inshore environment. We actually have a new committee dealing with a lot of these things. We have an aquaculture committee that's.
Interesting.
Matt's on it, that we're dealing with some of these issues.
Near shore is a
I'm
weird
just
statement.
saying, I don't know what that means, and if I don't know what that means, probably the reader wouldn't know, so.
If it means clam diggers, just say.
Yeah, just say clam diggers.
Oh, clam diggers and wormers too, I think.
Harvesters.
Yeah,
Could you say intertidal?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Intertidal harvesters,
Exactly.
Those are the only things that we control.
That works fine. Yeah,
we're trying to change that.
Okay,
we are.
Next time.
okay.
You know, so and then with regard to the incompatible development, you could just put such as whatever, you know, and list a couple things, just to give the reader an idea.
Okay,
Maintain commercial fishing, CF1, CF2 is commercial fishing,
yeah.
enterprises, establishments, instead of it being converted, because I think that some of the data we got from Judy, that most of the new houses that were being built were in CF2.
Too, yeah.
Yeah,
That surprised me.
me too, so.
Shouldn't.
I'd like to kind of swing that the other way, you know, or have a goal that kind of,
Yeah. Incompatible development, you know, for example, residential development and,
right, keep residential and shoreline residential, you know, and keep commercial fishing and commercial fishing.
okay,
It's zoned that way for a reason.
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, you could even just say, review shoreline zoning land use, protect existing access from development that's incompatible with commercial fishing.
Yeah, perfect.
That makes it, that just reads better for me.
Okay. Everybody agree with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Now, what about, there were 4 goals identified in this particular section, but when I looked at marine economy, that also includes tourism. It also includes aquaculture, and I'm glad that, I guess that's being addressed with this new committee,
Yeah.
because I know aquaculture has been a bone of contention with some people.
Well, we've got a wide variety of people on the committee. We have lobstermen on the committee, and we're trying to identify areas where aquaculture is applicable, and it's not in the way of, you know, lobstering or poking and all that type of
Yeah.
fishing, so,
I think we got every type of fisherman on the committee.
yeah, we do.
I think we have every fishery covered except for maybe scallops.
Yep.
So in terms of future development, looking into the future and future planning, obviously aquaculture is happening. And do we want to make sure that that's looked at in a positive way in the plan? Or how do you want to address that?
Well, what our committee is, because to get a permit for aquaculture, you don't have to be, it's state waters.
Yeah,
And the committee, basically, we're trying to get a strong enough committee that will have some say with DMR. You know,
Okay.
somebody gets a permit, because DMR doesn't, as they listed a little bit what the town has to say, but not really.
That's why, in some ways, I don't know if we should even include it in the plan, because like Kevin said, it's more of a state issue than a town issue, as much as we want it to be a town issue.
Really?
It unfortunately isn't.
We're the only town that's trying to do this, to work with DMR. So there's a,
So you want to, you think it's better to take aquaculture out?
I don't think it's in there now, and I don't think we need to add it.
Don't need
Okay.
to add it.
All right, okay.
if it ain't broke.
Yeah, all right, that's good. Anything else on the marine economy section?
The
Okay,
only other thing I would mention that doesn't seem to be included in there, if you're talking tourism and stuff, is charter boats. You know, but I don't really know what we could include, that it doesn't really already cover them, you know, kind of other ways access, stuff
No.
like that.
Yeah.
okay.
And two of them did lose access.
I think if we just mention tourism, that probably
Yeah.
would be sufficient. But I don't want to give people the idea that the marine economy is all about fishing.
No.
That's the bottom line, because it does have, you know, recreational boating and
Food
tourism,
stands,
so,
food stands, restaurants.
yeah,
et
sure.
cetera. Big
Okay.
deal, yeah,
You want to say something about safe harbor
Yeah.
and that kind of
absolutely.
marine economy?
Yeah,
Say-
well,
The mariner.
yeah, they contribute, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
Talking
Big
about
business.
fishing
Yeah,
out there,
sure.
there.
Well, that's, yeah.
I think we have it pretty well covered.
I think so.
Yeah.
all right. All right, great. All right, so if we make these the changes that we've just discussed, you feel like you got them?
What did we say about safe harbor? I think-
Well, Safe Harbor Boatyard is, Safe Harbor, actually, Great Island Safe Harbor Boatyard, I guess, is, it's a big operation.
Oh, I know, what did you guys, are you gonna say something about it or no?
No,
Not
I
say something.
I think we decided no.
Yeah, they're pretty capable on their own.
Yeah,
They're
well,
All right, so we don't have to say
National
anything in the future to
multi-million
support
dollar
Safe
company.
Harbor.
Arrive it into the end.
I
All
don't
right.
think so.
Name one, you gotta
They're
name them all.
self-supporting,
All right, okay,
yes.
All right.
Same with Dolphin and Holbrook's and.
all right. Okay, anything else? Can we agree as a task force that, given the changes that we've discussed and that we're comfortable with this particular section of the plan? Marine economy,
Sounds like it.
okay? Good to go. Marine resources. Okay.
Goal 1.
Just take a look at the goals for the marine resources, just to highlight them. Improve water quality in nearshore and deep water marine environments, that's obviously pretty motherhood and apple pie type of thing. Enhance and maintain the marine ecosystem.
Al, could we go back to 1?
Yep,
Strategy 1.1.4, which talks about PFAS.
yep.
This was written 2 years ago. We've had some changes over the last 6 months,
Yeah, you think?
and I'm thinking maybe we could word that differently. It's very,
Well, right now, we have an emerging real-world issue, right?
we do, but we also might want to say something of how we, as a community in Harpswell, act regarding that.
Okay,
We have been responding.
right.
I don't know, but this just seemed like, okay, I've sort of forgotten something happened 6 months ago, you know?
Do you have any recommended wording changes?
I'll have to think about it, yeah.
Something like respond to the growing concerns
Yes,
about
yeah,
PFOAs
as a
and
town, how we
PFAs.
respond to them, yeah.
Okay.
Al, I've got a comment, and I'm not exactly sure how to address this, but nowhere in Harpswell, because we are these long peninsulas, are we any less than probably, or any more than probably half a mile from the shore.
Right.
So what happens on land often has a direct impact on what happens on shore. really talk about how land use policies in the interior, as well as in the shoreland, actually affect marine water quality. And a direct example of that is septic systems, which the plan does talk about nitrogen as a determinant of water quality in saltwater systems, which is absolutely correct. That's old science now, but it was new 20 years ago. But septic systems in Harpswell, I think, are especially potential contributors to nitrogen pollution because of the way that the effluent from the septic system can get into, even if it's treated, can get into the bedrock fissures and then go directly into the marine environment. The only thing that takes nitrogen up is plant life. So if there's nothing taking the nitrogen up, even in treated septic water, it can affect the shoreline environment. And that's especially true as we see waters warming. So it might, and I'm thinking a lot about Orr's Cove and places in Harpswell where Harpswell's lucky in that we do have fairly good flushing rates along our coast, but that's not always the case in every environment. And the more we develop the interior lots, the greater amount of septic systems we're going to have. So I don't want to add a burden to this plan that doesn't need to be added, but I do think it's important that we recognize that somewhere.
In policy 2.2, it says protect the marine environment
I
from
think-
harm, and then we talk about limiting private docks.
What about something like that?
We could,
1.1.2 talks about septic systems.
okay. Collect and maintain data on septic systems on coastal properties, including maybe, in addition to collecting data, what's the payoff? What's the bottom line?
See, every system is a coastal system in that respect, because even systems that aren't directly on the water are going to end up affecting coastal water quality.
Okay, so you're saying if we did eliminate coastal properties and just put properties, would that be more in line with what you're,
Yeah.
because,
Coastal and inland.
Yeah,
okay,
Maybe
coastal and,
inland.
okay,
yeah.
all right.
Amy, would you like to specifically address like nitrogen fixation from plants and add in something about that, or just leave it to collecting
I think it would be
data?
really helpful to add something like that in, Matt. I really do.
Yeah, I think it's
Because it
positive.
may be an area for future Conservation Commission studies, and it would be great if we could have something like that in the plan. So if the Conservation Commission said, you know, we really need to start studying nitrogen loading on inland properties and see where it's going on the coast, that would bolster that.
Okay.
We could pick up on that too, because we're already addressing it as we talk about removal of trees and impervious surface. So that would tie in nicely.
Yeah.
Okay, so strategy 1.1.2, we're going to add coastal and interior or properties, and do you think adding comments about,
Yeah, and it would
Yeah.
go really well in policy 1.2, institute measures to improve marine water quality. We could also add I'm sure Matt can wordsmith that, to
Yeah.
add something that says support efforts to gather more information on the effect of nitrogen from inland septic systems on coastal water quality.
Okay.
okay, got it?
Yep.
Okay, great. Any other comments? Marine resources? Yes, sir.
In goal 4, if I can jump ahead to that, we talk about work with regional partners and neighboring communities. So I think the PFAS, leak at
Brunswick.
Landing is an example of that. And at the very least, we could be writing letters to, the Brunswick Town Council to make sure that they're attending to that, because if it goes in the water up there, it kind of can come down here.
Yeah.
We have somebody on that committee from town. His name escapes me right now.
Paul,
Who?
Paul Sisilski.
Yep.
So if we were looking at
Could you
golf,
repeat that, please? Somebody's on which?
The committee, on the landing committee, that it dealt with Picnic Pond and the PFAS, when they did the cleanup a couple of years ago at the pond and other places. So we've been getting updates from him.
Would be good, because I think you're right on, would it be good to add a sentence that says to have regular reporting? Would that? is that-
Yeah, you can.
You can, because we do have it already.
We do have
Yeah, we're
it
doing it
already.
now.
Yeah, so it would be good to put it in.
So it should be in there. It should be-
okay, which, under goal 4, which strategy would you recommend modifying? 4.1.2, work collaboratively with regional groups working on, and advocating
So work
for,
collaboratively with regional groups and nearby communities, for example.
Yeah.
in nearby communities.
Yeah,
Okay,
We are now, it's just not written down anywhere.
it's not written in place.
Yeah.
But let's not lose the opportunity of the
Yeah.
process.
okay. Sure. Everybody like that?
Yep.
All right.
Al, before you go any further,
Yes, ma'am.
strategy 3.1.3, where it
Yep.
says install appropriately sized culverts to allow salt marsh migration.
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity. There's a special type of culvert that should be used, which is a coastwise culvert.
Coast-wise,
It's a program that the state has put into effect because they're engineered differently to take incoming and outgoing.
it's coast-wise, not coast-wide.
No, coastwise.
Yeah.
WISE.
Okay.
It's a culvert with a foot valve,
Culvert with what?
with a foot valve. It allows water in and not, like over to, is it Bethel Point?
Yeah, it goes in and out rather than just,
So it's not only a question of size, it's also a question of
yeah,
this latest
the way it's installed.
properly sized and,
Yeah.
okay. So we will insert coastwise or make reference to coastwise culverts in addition to size.
And it's the same as, and it's a state term.
Okay,
And coastwise is one word, and the W and the C are both capitalized.
okay,
So that would have a definition if you went to look at it.
okay. Coastwise culvert, okay, great. Anything else? Great.
You have one.
All right, can we say that with those changes, we are comfortable with marine resources section of this plan?
Yes.
Everybody's nodding.
You're laughing? Okay. All right. Anything else? All right, let's move on to housing. I know Mark has sent out some material on housing, the Affordable Housing or Attainable Housing Working Group
I did leave it home.
has submitted a final report, which the Select Board has accepted. And I would just like to open it up to discussion, comments about what's been submitted above and beyond what we have here in the plan, and whether you think the latest submissions are the way we want to go in this plan.
Do we have a choice?
Sure.
Didn't seem like it.
Oh, it didn't?
No.
Well, be specific about what you might be objecting to.
You wanna?
Well, I was a little confused by the communications in the last week. The select board has approved, accepted
We did.
the work task force thing, and told us to put it in our plan, right?
Bob, could you speak up, please? Bob, could you speak up?
They told, and what I understand is the select board accepted, or whatever the word is, approved it, and then told us to put it in our plan.
Okay, so it's a
Does
done
that
deal.
mean we have a choice?
They accepted the report from the committee. right?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we forwarded it to this committee.
Yeah.
But did you forward it for information or because you said this should go in the plan? I was not confused whether we're being directed or informed.
That's exactly what I was getting at. yeah.
We say informed, but we're hoping that you would accept it, but we'll go with informed.
Okay, well, with that said, does anybody here have an objection to any segment of the Attainable Housing Working Group report that the Select Board has forwarded for our consideration?
I don't have any objections, but I have a thought that I would like to maybe just have some discussion about. And it may be that we're not really ready to have this discussion, but I just want to put this out here. I sent everybody this opinion piece from the New York Times
Yeah.
from Tanya Cortez and Tina Smith. And
I really tried to open it, but I was
I
not
know.
successful.
I couldn't either.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that they say is that outsourcing development to the private market leaves affordable housing subject to the boom and bust cycle of private investment. And I'm beginning to feel more and more like the town, if this town is really interested in affordable housing, we should float a bond and we should ask at public, at town meeting, to actually float money and to pay for affordable housing, and to do it right, to do it with great oversight, to do it so that it's well-built and solid, and that it actually looks like a place that you really want to live in. So I'm just floating that idea out there to see if that's something that the select board or this committee wants to add to these recommendations, is just to give the Harpswell taxpayer the opportunity to actually put their money where their mouth is.
Mark, you have anything to add to that, comment?
Yeah, I think actually one of the recommendations that's included in the report is that the town create a housing trust to do exactly that.
Yep.
And so that's one of the recommendations. I think the concern of the Affordable Housing Working Group, and I'm going to put words in their mouth, is that the success of housing trusts in small communities in Maine has been limited. I would point out, though, essentially that mechanism already exists. As you know, the Brunswick Housing Authority has a companion organization, which is a not-for-profit housing development group that is chartered to work in the town of Harpswell. They were the developers of the one affordable housing project in the community.
Yep.
That mechanism essentially already exists. It is a matter of money, and I think one of the recommendations in the report is the town pursue the creation of a housing trust to raise money to in fact pursue housing development.
Yeah, I was on the select board when that project went through, and Mark is right. The land was, I believe, donated to the Brunswick Housing Authority, and it wasn't great land. And so what this article, I guess what I and I will shut up after this, but what I'd like to see is something like that happen, but on land that can really support it, where it's not, things aren't squeezed in, where there's money for landscaping, where it's a place that, you know, has good design, I mean, you could take something straight out of Randall Aaron's, design
Rural by design,
standards
yeah.
and really do it nicely, you know? You could create something that looks, like Harpswell, and whatever that means. But that at least has some character and some quality to it. But it would require that it not be on a shoestring. It would require that the town participate in that and say, yes, you know, this is something we really want to support. I'm just floating that out there. I'm just,
I'm gonna go to Brian first and then.
I just want to bring up that in reading the past town plans, this issue has been part of those for 30 years at least, and has always bumped up against a significant portion, I don't know if it's a minority or not, of people that oppose it. I am supportive of it, but I think if, we can create ways, or the town can create ways of doing this as much on the down low as possible, it'll be easier to get some of this done.
Bob?
Now that I know the select board simply wanted to inform us about this great report, I think we should accept it, as long as we're not directed to. And then I would take the section of the report that talks about a trust, and if there's an easy consensus, because if there's not, then I drop this, but I would like to see the wording increased to say, it appears obviously, a bit of a escape hatch, it appears obvious that the free market is not capable of solving our housing for working people.
Right.
I'd put it in those terms. And you could say school teachers, first responders, and so on. And that the town and that this new body should address this issue with some vigor, something like that, just to give it some punch, without saying what the solution is. But I just think if we are easy consensus that we agree that the free market ain't doing it for us, and that we need to begin to look at town interventions, that would strengthen it a great deal.
Yeah.
That's what I
Agreed.
like.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just, and this is in the report, and I don't think I included it in the conference plan, but if you go to page 11, and you don't have to do it right now, but there is a section about ownership and financing that talks essentially in almost the same terms as what Amy discussed from the New York Times article and other things, that the goal should be housing for the community, by the community. It talks about establishing a community loan fund or housing trust, et cetera. So I think many of those ideas are embodied in the report that the select board adopted, and I think we could weave that into the comprehensive plan
Great.
pretty easily, and we'll do that if you tell us to.
And
People
Bob,
like that?
I liked your
Yes.
terminology, and I like the idea of keeping it general but giving it punch.
Making it clear that it's part of the vision for the future for this
Yeah,
community.
exactly.
That we do something about these issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing, we had a conversation before this meeting, and one of the things that we discussed was we can have a lot of ordinances and so on, but the developers that come in here and are grappling with this issue, there needs to be a certain element of creativity. In other words, this document, Rural by Design, from
Randall Arndt.
Randall Arendt, it's a big, thick, it's even thicker than this, I think.
Oh, God.
But
It's only that big.
it goes through a lot of different examples of how communities in various different locations throughout the United States, various situations, so on, have tackled increasing or development, future development, in ways that preserve the landscape, space, and so on. It takes a certain amount of creativity, not just the cookie-cutter approach that you often see in a subdivision where you gotta have, X thousands of square feet, boom, 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 and then a, road in the middle, and thank you very much, and you're gone. No, so, I think, one thing we have to keep in mind is not only what we've discussed before, but also trying to figure out how we can incentivize developers coming in here to be a little bit more creative in terms of the way they approach these problems to accomplish what we're talking about here. So, I mean, I think this is all good, because what it says to me is that this is not a black and white issue, that we can make some progress in these areas without compromising a lot of what we value in the town. So, that's good.
Well, I think that housing committee that we're putting together, they're looking for new members.
Is that a bold-faced advertisement there?
Yeah, well, I don't have to be on it.
Hairy faced.
You can't be on it, I'm on time.
But, yep, they can address all those issues.
That's great.
Yeah, and we don't have to do the details here.
No,
Yeah.
no, we
Yeah.
don't.
I guess, the only question I have is, I like the idea of attainable housing and stuff like that, but it seems like we're making it easier for construction to happen within town, by building on smaller lots and stuff like that, which is fine and dandy. But by doing so, we're kind of talking out both sides of our mouth in the plan. Construction is the number one thing mentioned in this plan is climate change. It's mentioned more than affordable housing, working waterfront, attainable housing combined. It's almost mentioned as many times as the word Harpswell. That being said, the biggest contributor to climate change is construction. So if we're trying to mitigate climate change, then we shouldn't be trying to make it easier for construction to happen, or you're contributing to climate change.
Well, that's a stretch.
I have it right here, the
I-
article from Yale, that says 37% of greenhouse gases are emitted from construction.
Okay, so what I would say,
Large
Kind
scale.
of construction.
what I would say is that,
No, it's just the process of creating cement is the second biggest contributor to greenhouse gases in the world, and every house needs a foundation.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
we talked about creativity.
Right.
We're also talking about, this is also a technology thing too. Because when you look into the future and the way houses are gonna be constructed in the future, it's not necessarily gonna be with cement and boards all the time. It's gonna be, there are gonna be technologies that are gonna be coming on the horizon that are gonna allow for very environmentally friendly structures to be built that are gonna be capable of sustaining and surviving in Maine winters and so on.
but as new technologies come out, 99% of the time, said new technologies are not affordable until they've been mass produced. So that's not gonna be the type of materials that affordable housing is gonna be using. They're gonna be using the stuff that's less expensive, that's harms the climate more to keep it affordable.
But I have a question then, recognizing the dilemma,
Yeah.
as you posited it, how would you work your way through it?
I don't know.
yeah.
That's the
because,
problem.
We need something, Mike.
I agree,
Yeah.
but
We need some housing in town. My neighbor, he's closing tomorrow. He bought it for like 1.2. He just sold it for 2.8 million. My nephew on Oars Island, it's a small cape. It's a 3-bedroom cape. He's closing on in a couple of weeks, 600,000. Who could afford this stuff?
I can. I afforded it.
Yes, sir.
Huh?
I don't
Yeah, but
disagree
you
with
didn't pay
Matt's
600,000.
observation in the article. You have to be careful, though. I sent out a thing about the cost of elementary school construction, and you gotta be careful you're comparing apples and oranges from year to year, and concrete, the percentage of concrete used in the construction of homes in Harpswell compared to the average dwelling unit across the country is much less. But I think Matt just made the perfect argument for allowing smaller homes on smaller lots that use less building materials, use less concrete, allow people to live closer together, etc. And I mean, this is all a game, I shouldn't call it a game. This is all an issue of choices and what happens and where people live and how they live and who's able to live in the community. And, you know, it's there. And, you know, you make your choices of how you want to live and how you want people to be able to live in your community. And, you know, you let the chips fall where they may. In Maine, I think the latest numbers are about 53% of carbon is from transportation. And I'm almost willing to bet that the emissions from a gasoline-powered automobile going from Bailey Island to Hannaford to Cook's Corner is a lot greater than the environmental impact of the concrete in the footers. It's all a whole series of trade-offs.
Well, I agree. I mean, Maine itself contributes 0.1 or 1/10 of 1% of the carbon to the world. So, I mean, we're doing our part already here. And I guess maybe that goes to why are we mentioning climate change so much then in the plan? And why aren't we focusing more on attainable housing and stuff like that, and making this easier for people to build here? That being said, we still run into the same problem. We live in a free market. Even if we make lots smaller, we can't tell a person, just, all right, you're selling 1/3 of an acre, you've got to sell it for only 10,000. They can still turn around and sell it for 40, 50, 100,000 or whatever, and that takes the affordability out of it. How do we, there's no way that I know of to make something affordable in the free market.
Amy, you had your hand up.
I agree with Matt. I think we are talking, and this is part of what happens when you do these kinds of comprehensive plans. You end up talking out of both sides because you're trying to achieve goals that sometimes are not compatible with each other. And I don't agree with Mark that smaller lot sizes is the answer in not all across town, because then we are dealing with groundwater issues, we're dealing with septic system issues. We're just looking at the Naval Air Station at the golf course putting in a 4-way stop sign. You're looking at more cars on the road and more traffic. But I also think that it is so possible for us to take the bull by the horns and, as Al said, get creative and start making our demands as a community about what kind of affordable housing we want. We could build something or cause something to be built, assist or direct in something like the American Farm, which I don't know how many apartment units or spaces that has in it, but probably dozens, I don't know.
12.
But why could we not buy the property and build something new that has those characteristics that might house 15 or 16 families? And in a really nice new construction that's totally compatible with Harpswell. But that would mean that we would have to be creative. We couldn't rely on the private market to do it. We would have to direct it. We would have to really get creative and say what we want. And I think the community can certainly do that.
And that's exactly what the report says, Amy.
Okay.
I don't read that in there. I read smaller lot sizes and increased
Well,
densities.
of course you do.
Okay, Bob.
But what it says
I don't
is
think
you
I'm
only
reading.
allow smaller lot sizes for attainable units, that those have to meet town design standards.
Okay.
I don't
I won't
understand
say
what the
anymore.
issue is.
Okay,
I'm
Bob,
done.
you wanted to,
I'm done.
Could I suggest that I think we should insert a reference in the report to the dilemma that Matt has raised, that we're cognizant of the fact that there is we're on the horns of a dilemma. Horns of a dilemma are like a fork in the road, and Yogi Berra cleaned it up entirely. When you come to a fork,
Take
take
it.
it. And so I suggest that
Both horns.
Grab it by the horns.
I suggest that this discussion is now getting down into the weeds that is beyond our capability in terms of the timeline and maybe even the composition of we know we're the 12 best brains in the business, that's for
sure,
sure.
yep.
But maybe not smart enough for this one. And we're going to hope on the new housing committee that's going to be set up to grapple with these issues without the constraints of the timeline that we're on right now. And that we should just recognize the problems, urge them to take some solutions, and that's as far as we can go at this point.
Yep, I agree. Hey, two good points in the same meeting. Nice.
okay, so,
I guess I don't see where in any of the goals, though, that it talks about, because I think what Amy said was a valid idea, that the town creates a fund, or whatever, a trust, and purchases that property and builds said unit. I guess, can somebody maybe point out what policy or goal that is? Because I think that is something important.
Report, or are you in the comprehensive plan?
I'm in the report thing, the draft that you sent us.
No, it's not in there, and I say that. If you go to
Oh,
the
okay.
report, on page 11, there's a whole section about ownership and financing.
I'm not on that page, because I.
What, page 11 of the report? Can we go back to page 11?
I'm talking about the.
Oh, the housing report.
The
Attainable
report
housing.
of the housing committee.
I don't have 11 pages.
I don't either.
Well, it was sent to you. I emailed it to
I
you.
copied what you emailed.
I have it, the email right here,
There you go. It's not
and
on
it's
there.
not 11 pages.
When did you get it?
I got it.
I got one yesterday and I got one Saturday.
Oh, it was a little inflation.
Well, I'm sorry. If I didn't attach it, I apologize.
okay, can you resend that, Mark?
Yeah, and there's a whole section on ownership and financing that talks about
Yeah.
many of the same ideas that you just,
Yeah, I definitely didn't get it.
It's not in anything I got.
I'm looking through all the attachments in the
So
email.
maybe we got part of it, but not all of it. So let's circle back and ask Mark to resend it.
And we can pick up some of this on Mark's report at our next meeting.
Yeah,
mean,
I
There's an
think,
overlap here.
so they're gonna suggest,
In
because,
fact, there's a serious overlap because it's already entered in. Lot size is entered into the housing discussion, and housing will enter into the lot size discussion, so.
so, that's a good suggestion. We'll circle back and fine tune this housing discussion a bit more. But I also want to focus on the next meeting, the next couple, on future land use. And so let's leave it that we'll complete our discussion of housing at the next meeting. And then we'll enter into the dialogue about future land use. And I don't think we need to do anything more at this point in time with housing until we complete our discussion. Does that sound?
Al,
Yes, sir.
I sent the whole
The engineering
report
was coming out.
to everybody yesterday morning.
Okay.
It was entitled CP Housing Policy, and it starts attaches the revised report of the Affordable Housing Working Group, and it is attached.
I don't think I got that either.
I have two things. I've got this housing introduction, it's from the comp plan, this is what I got. And then I got the housing committee report. Those are
You're
two
right.
attachments that I
Yep.
got.
You're absolutely right.
Yep.
I will send it to you.
Okay.
Al,
Yes, ma'am.
I still would like to go back to what Bob says. We're at a high, supposedly a high level.
Yeah.
Without the weeds. But I do think as part of the introduction or something, putting some emphasis on these things in a very broad manner directs people to start thinking about it.
Yeah.
And let that new committee grapple with the details.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I really like having that in there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
me too.
You good with that?
That's what I said.
Yep. You get all that?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So for
It's
future
being
land
recorded.
use, what are we supposed to review?
Well, we have,
My sense, I'm sorry to interrupt, my sense was that you felt that the future land use plan, as it's written in this draft, was of limited value.
well, the notion of creating all these districts and so on and so forth, I think it became clear that we needed a different approach. Mark and I and Matthew met and talked about future land use before this meeting, and Mark has agreed to put together a change, a modification to what we have here in the document, and that's what we'll base our further discussion on. It's not going to have all of the districts that we talked about, although I think one of the things that was brought out was that we have to come up with, there are a couple of things that we have to keep in mind. Future land use. What do we want the town to look like in the future? What are we trying to accomplish with all of the things that we've discussed and so on? What's, to the best of our ability, what's the end goal? What are we trying to make Harpswell look like in the future? And then the second is to create and develop enough flexibility so that we can address some unique issues that might crop up in, say, areas like village areas, non-conforming lots, and so on. And Mark has agreed to take that on, and he's agreed to put something out by our next meeting, October 8th, so that we can,
Before your next meeting.
before the next meeting, so that we can come forward and have something to look at and chew on and discuss in more detail. And then at the end of October, hopefully, we'll have enough time to think about it and make any suggestions and modifications, and then nail it down at that point in time.
Amy, I think my expectations and Al's expectations are different for the October 8th meeting. My expectation for the October 8th meeting is essentially to construct a way for the task force to go through the land use issues and say what should be deleted, what should be kept, what do we want to change, what's the framework for what should be in the future land use section going forward. So my plan is not to come here with a draft of a revised section or any such thing. It's to say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? And what needs to be in the plan to accomplish that?
Brian, save me.
What? I'm sorry.
Good luck, Brian.
And as I told Al, and if you don't want me to do that, say, yep, don't do that, Mark, and that's fine.
It sounds as if, Mark, and Al, you've given a new land use plan, how it would look like, some thought. I mean, because this is, what was it, 2 weeks away, and you're not starting from zero, obviously, to potentially give us something at that time. I find the current land use plan you know, just such a mishmash and so detailed here and detailed here that it would be difficult for me to go through this and, you know, kind of talk about, well, you know, this should be changed this way, this. I'd prefer to listen to your idea in 2 weeks about what this should look like.
Okay, well, that's kind of, I think, what we're driving at this point. And use that as a benchmark, as a foundation for closing on something that we can all agree with.
You know, Alvin, a couple of things I'd like to report on our meeting last week that we had with the state geologist. Along that lines, I'm thinking about what the people in town were asking for in the beginning. And we've gotten into disparate pieces that we agree and don't agree on, but I'm trying to think of how do we do this? In other words, we're going to do this, and how would you come up with the plan for the future land use plan that's there? And what's the best way to accomplish what the people are looking for, which was housing, et cetera. And I assume that's kind of what's going to happen in this.
Yeah. Well, your question, your comment is covers a lot of territory.
I know.
But basically, let's kind of backtrack a little bit here. What we've tried to do in the last several months, several meetings, is to go through the plan as it exists and to point out things that we agree should be kept in, things that should be modified, things that should be deleted or whatever. And we've been working through that process. This all really is going to culminate in a future look at Harpswell that really encompasses all of these things and is expressed in a future land use plan that will potentially allow smaller houses, some small houses, that will address some of the concerns that, about access to the waterfront and so on and so forth. All I can say is that my hope, my thought was that we would look at the future land use plan, given what we've gone through before in the last number of months, look at the future land use plan that, and some of the ideas and framework, if you will, that Mark is agreed to provide. And then, by the end of October, come to some sort of consensus that this is something that makes sense, that we can agree with, and that we could put forward. And that, following what we've done in the past, what I've done in the past is that in November, we put something out to the public, through the anchor or some other means that said, this is kind of what we're looking at. We do intend to have, I think, some public meetings, I think, need to be held, at least one for sure, a public hearing, where we can kind of close the loop on a lot of these issues. And last meeting, it was suggested we come up with 2 dates, one in February and one in March, if February is a washout or snow out or whatever, and that we can roll something out that the town will at least give the town an opportunity to say, yeah, this is more of what we want to do, and this is more on the right track, and then come to March and put it forward for a vote. So I know that there's a lot that has to be assumed here, maybe, but, I think at this point,
We have to do it.
yeah, we have to do it. Amy?
Go ahead.
I thought that the discussion we just had about housing was a significant step forward from where we were, and that it was helped a lot by the committee working further on the issue, and then marked by your summary of the committee's work in this document. And I'm ready to go with this much more than we were. I don't want to have another meeting where we repeat the same sort of arguments we've had about the land use program. And I think having some people do some work on it beforehand and try and develop an analog of this that is steps on from where we've been in the past would be helpful. So I can understand, Mark, why you might have some reservations about doing that. But I think it's important that somebody or some subset of this group take a crack at creating a synthesis that we can all get on board with.
I agree with Dave, and I agree with Mary Ann. I mean, I don't know how many of you were at the meeting, the groundwater meeting?
A lot.
But-
All of it.
Yeah,
No.
and that was a very heavily attended meeting. That meeting had more people in it
It was a good meeting.
expressing interest and concern than, I think, any other meeting that we've had. So if the future land use plan does not address groundwater protection in a meaningful way, I don't think this plan is going to be complete. And whatever I don't know how it's going to happen or what it will look like, but the future land use plan, I believe, is going to have to assuage people's concerns about protection of future groundwater use. I really think, I don't know how you're going to do it, but it needs to happen.
To take from what Amy said, we had a very large turnout. We had 120 people there. Christy told me it was the largest special meeting other than town meeting. Oh, no, she said more than any hearing has had. Plus, we had almost 100 people on Zoom,
Wow, 100 on Zoom.
pretty close. The point that we, as the committee, the Conservation Commission was trying to do, was trying to provide data from a geologist to explain our system, which she did, I think, quite well. She also brought up the reasons we don't really know anything specific. She brought up the reasons of how much water has fallen and why, in fact, we have enough. All that being said, we're going to now have another meeting on
30th.
October 30th that's going to really deal with the nuts and bolts of what you got to do. And it's not all development. It's got to do with, you are the monitor of your own drinking water and how to use less water, what to do in landscaping, what to do to hold the water to fill your aquifer, because that is kind of the way you're going to have to go. It has somewhat to do with where we develop, but it also has a lot to do with how everybody uses their water. So that'll happen before, that's going to happen the end of October.
Yeah, you're saying you can't necessarily legislate solutions. A lot of it has to do with individual
Yeah.
actions, yeah.
Trying to figure out how we prepare, or who prepares some documentation to make the next meeting, which is what, 2 weeks' time, right? As productive as possible. What I'm sensing is, first of all, I think at this point, we should take the section on land use and put it aside. We can't unthink it. We know what it says, pretty much. We know that individually, we all have different points of view, all sorts of problems. Put it aside for the time being. I'd like to ask this question of you, Mark. Would you, I liked what you said about what you were preparing to do. It was sort of like a study guide. as opposed to a prescriptive or a description of what is. I understand that the chair is looking for as much concrete stuff on paper that we can really begin to say yes, no, and move on. But I think that the next meeting is still going to be have all sorts of questions. We're not going to be able to see a document that we're going to be able to say, that's it. Mark, could you have as good a sense of the discussions we've had, of the discussions that have taken place outside? Could you, though, put forth a page, 2 sides, of a indicative land use plan based on a sense of what might possibly fly, and then produce a study guide for it, saying, here are the 5 basic questions that have to be answered, and here's how you begin to look at them. But I think that if we we need something concrete in front of us, but I think we're not at a point where we're going to be able to edit it the way we did just the 2 chapters we did today. We're nowhere near that, that's for sure. So could you put forward an indicative plan for the sake of argument or discussion, and then produce a bit of a study guide in terms of here are the fundamental questions that remain unanswered by this indicative plan, something like that? And would that satisfy the chair's reasonable need for something a little more concrete?
Let me answer that by saying, I think there is a significant missing element in the previous draft of the land use section. And that is that there is no relative statement of what the town's objectives are in terms of managing future growth, development, and change. And so, if you send me out the door tonight to come back in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
my proposal is to start with, what are we trying to accomplish? What are the objectives in terms of the future land use? That's the key, because that's where the balancing tests start to come into play. If there can be agreement on what we're trying to accomplish, then I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Then translating that into the future land use plan, I think is going to be relatively simple.
Yep.
And are you prepared to write a indicative statement that we could then bounce our ideas off of?
Sure, or whatever.
I like the whatever. Dave?
So in the current document on the future land use, there are 3 goals. And maybe we could decide whether we agree with those 3 goals. It could be a structure for you to create something
Okay.
around. The first one is ensure that land use ordinances are aligned with the comprehensive plan.
That's meaningless.
I don't know.
because
It's not a
It's a
controversial.
wasted goal. That is an absolute waste.
And the state law requires it.
Okay,
It's wasted.
so we're not gonna debate.
State
that.
law
We're on
requires.
easy ground now.
Number 2, preserve the small town, and I added, and rural character of Harpswell.
Yep.
Does anybody want to argue against that?
What page are you reading from?
Page 36 of the future land use section. And the third goal is.
Wait.
Let's go, second goal.
Second,
Yeah.
preserve
You
this,
added- You added rural character.
yeah, I did, but I could,
But I'm gonna ask a question about what you really mean by small town.
I didn't write this, so I have no idea what they were thinking about when
But I
they
think
said small
that's an
town.
element because,
We spent a whole meeting talking about this, and we came up with written material, which you should have.
I don't have.
About,
back and see
about
if I can
rural
find it.
character,
About rural
About
character.
rural character.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we spent 2 or 3 hours talking
right.
about it.
No,
I
we
meant
approved
small
that
town.
statement.
And that was the creation of the people who wrote this, not me.
I understand.
So I assumed it was somewhat similar to rural character.
But they wrote that before we approved
Yes.
the general statement.
So do we need small town?
All right, go ahead, I'm sorry. 3,
The third and last goal was understand and mitigate the impacts of climate change on land use. Now, I know there was some debate about climate change, but I'm glad to see that Matt has decided that maybe it is not a hoax and that it's
No, it's a
something
hoax.
already
No,
being created by concrete.
No, it's a hoax.
And diesel engines.
Dave, I really think we need to have something in the future land use plan about groundwater. Because you can't live here in the future if you don't have adequate water. And I don't know how that should go in, but I think it needs to be there.
But you've made that point, but that's subsidiary to the larger questions we're trying to deal with now, I think, which is the broad framework.
Yeah, I see that. I see
How does that, Mark, how does that resonate with what he just mentioned, the 3 goals? How does that resonate with what you're envisioning coming forward with?
Well, I would say the first goal is meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Second goal is probably a good
Whatever it means.
objective goal, if we can be clear as to what it means. I think the third one is one that needs to be included somehow, because I think there, as an outsider, clearly there are implications of sea level rise on the community. And I think professionally, those will continue to be there, and I think that needs to be addressed. I think there are other potential objectives that are in there in terms of what kind of community you want to be in the future. And I think
Well, I mean, to some extent, haven't we addressed a lot of those elements in the vision statement that we came up with?
Well, yeah.
Well,
mean-
I'm gonna make a bad comment, but the vision statement is so motherhood and apple pie. It's almost
Commerce.
meaningless when
Chamber
it
of
comes
Commerce.
to land use. Amy, what does the vision statement say about land use?
You know, I don't remember. Yeah, it is motherhood and apple pie.
It doesn't provide any direction.
Okay, Bob.
I don't think I would suggest we try to draw this to a conclusion. I have a probably unreasonable faith in Mark's capacity to produce a good document that will move us forward at our next meeting. And I would urge Mark to take into consideration goals 2 and 3, jettison 1, and we should resurrect, because it's sort of interesting, and it should be shared with all of us as one of the documents for the next meeting, the rural nature statement, which we've approved. It was a good one. It was fairly general, but it's still, to just refresh your memory with that document and come up with the statement to help us move forward on the 11th, the 8th, whatever it is. 8th.
Well, also, this part that we're talking about, goal 2, we're talking about the physicality of a small-town atmosphere. Why wouldn't we include something about the ability for people to live here, having to do, that ties into the attainable portion? Because that was something that was brought out at the meetings that we had by the public. Is it,
You talking specifically about water resources?
no, I'm talking about, we're saying small town and rural character. but we are also on a community, a diverse community that is welcoming to all age groups. And it would seem to me that's something that could be put in this part as well.
As part of the foundational statement that Mark is talking about.
Right.
Good.
I think that's in the, it's in the real character stuff
Yeah.
that we
So-
talked
You
about.
would be, yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how to close this discussion out in a way that gives everybody a clear expectation.
I think the
We
word
only
is
have 10
adjourned.
minutes.
Do you think, do you,
You'll know it when you see it.
okay, so Mark, do you feel that you can address a number of these points in what you will come forward with by the 8th of October?
Yes.
Or before? Okay.
He writes fast.
I like that. And just to let everybody know, Matthew and I met last week, and he's been busily looking at ways to reduce the size of this document. There's a lot of text that he thinks we can probably eliminate without losing a lot, and I think people will like that, because one comment I got was that, what are you trying to hide here? So reducing, compressing it, making it more concise is good, and he's working on that, so. All right, so I think we have plans over the next few weeks. It's going to be an interesting discussion on the 8th, and then again on the end of October, dealing with future land use and housing. We'll also resume the housing discussion and try to close that out as well. Look for the anchor article coming out 1 October, and then the next article is going to deal with future land use. We'll try to address that so that we can put that out to the public, what we're thinking. So, any other comments or questions before we adjourn? Thank you all very much. I mean, I really want to thank you all for hanging in here. These are tough discussions, and it's been a long time grinding away at this, so